I don't have any credit cards. I don't do debt, certainly not any personally guaranteed debt, which would include credit cards. I just run all of my expenses, like Dave, through a checking account with debit cards. Most people have no idea what they expend. They just swipe and go. Most people have no intention behind their spending. Well, that's what we're trying to get, is some intentionality behind your spending. Many people, when they think about budgets, overwhelm themselves with the minutia of the details. I've got news for you. Once you do this exercise, there's gonna be a ton of miscellaneous expenses that you just had no idea about.
If you think wealth is about luxury cars, designer jewelry, or exotic vacations, you're in the wrong place. We're not concerned about your net worth, your 401k, or how much debt you have. Our approach is much different because real wealth isn't only about money. It's about freedom. Freedom to work because you want to, not because you have to. Freedom to pursue your purpose, live on passive income, and build a legacy. That freedom starts now. Welcome to the Real Wealth Formula with Brad Hovis, where each episode breaks down the principles, mindset, and practical steps to help you experience financial freedom today. Real talk, real numbers, real freedom. This is the Real Wealth Formula.
This episode is brought to you by REBIZ.com. You've probably seen the same old stuff in your feed. Invest in a franchise, start an ATM route, buy a car wash, launch a vending machine side hustle. Cool ideas, but here's what they don't tell you. The good ones are way too expensive, and the cheap ones barely cash flow. But there's a business model that's quietly producing big paydays as well as monthly income for people working from home, a coffee shop, or even out of their pickup truck. Visit REBIZ.com, that's REIBIZ.com, to see how it all works. What's up, moguls? Welcome to the Real Wealth Formula. Today's question we're going to be asking and answering is how to reduce your monthly expenses. And full disclosure, I love Dave Ramsey and I love his approach. I teach Financial Peace University at various events. I love what he's doing. And so a lot of this comes from Dave Ramsey, but a lot of this is really from me and what has worked for me. So I'm not trying to just give you another thing that you've heard. In fact, I'm trying to highlight various aspects of personal finance that, you know, Dave and I approach slightly differently. So you'll actually never hear me say very many things I disagree with on from Dave Ramsey, though he is a one to follow for sure. There's a few things I disagree with, but nothing to write home about. But the first step that I see in reducing your monthly expenses is to track your last month expenses. This is a task, this is an actionable item. This is what you can do on your way to work this morning. Go to your bank and download a Excel spreadsheet from your bank, of your bank account, with all of your expenses. Now, here's the part that might confuse a few people. What I'm saying to you is go to your bank and download that Excel file. What I'm not saying to you is also involve yourself with credit cards. Now, I guess, let me be more clear. How I do my banking, I don't have any credit cards. I don't do debt, certainly not any personally guaranteed debt, which would include, credit cards. I just run all of my expenses, like Dave, through a checking account with debit cards. So I've got, two debit cards. You can kind of see, I'm not going to give you the numbers, but I've got two debit cards, one for business, one for personal. That's what I run around with. I don't have any credit cards. So what we want to do is make it so that you are just spending money in one place, right? One place, and that being your checking account. However, some of you have become addicted to points, miles, and you go and put everything on your credit card. We'll talk about, helping you get rid of those in just a second. But what we want to get is one Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet. You don't need Excel. I use Google Sheets. It's pretty much free. So there's no excuse to not get this going. But go download all the expenses from your checking account and go download all the expenses from your credit cards if you're using them. Again, eventually we want you to not have any expenses in your credit card. We just want them in your checking account, okay? So that they're all in one spot. And then what you're going to do is take all of those expenses, not the income, just the expenses from all of last month. So take a full chunk from day 1 to day 30 or 31, depending on when you're listening to this. Take that data and look at all of the expenses and put them together. They'll have it by date. You can sort it and that kind of thing. Because what we want to do is look at all of the expenses. Very few people do this unless you are, kind of going through a personal finance renaissance for yourself. Most people have no idea what they expend. They just swipe and go. There's money in the account. They keep moving. Most people have no intention behind their spending. Well, that's what we're trying to get, is some intentionality behind your spending. So what we want you to do is go and take this data. Should be a long list of every expense that you had for last month, a full month, calendar month. Then we want you to, on the side in another column, create a category, the categories that you are going to spend. Now, you're limited to 10 categories: house, transportation, education, health, those types of things. You get to choose what 10 categories they are. I'm not going to tell you what, the main ones that I choose. We're not trying to get too granular on this. And the reason why we're not trying to get granular on this is because many people, when they think about budgets, overwhelm themselves with the minutia of the details. Right? Instead of just saying house, they'll say rent, utilities, maintenance, gardening. They'll try to go through every single expense, and it's just not necessary, categorizing every single expense. What we want to do is get a picture of where you're at from just a 30,000 foot view. So only get onto 10 categories. You're limited to 10, okay? And miscellaneous needs to be one of them. Okay, I've got news for you. Once you do this exercise, there's going to be a ton of miscellaneous expenses that you just had no idea about. So list the house, list transportation, list food. Those are some basic ones, right? Ramsey talks about 4 walls that are necessary: your house, utilities, transportation, and food. Those are 4 that you're definitely going to have. You may have, and then miscellaneous is going to be definitely 5, but you may have a handful of different ones, like education. It could be travel, right? Maybe you travel a lot. Clothes. But we want to be able to fit all of your expenses into these 10 categories. That's step number 1. Because before you can reduce your expenses, you got to know what they are. People have no idea about this stuff, but you are. You're going to be a mogul. You're going to follow the Real Wealth formula, and you are going to start the process to make this a success. But you got to start somewhere. This is one of the harder steps for people. I suggest also doing it with your spouse, where you're sitting down together and looking at your numbers together. Okay. That way you can categorize it. If there's an argument, wait a second. Is this for house, or is this for clothes, or is this food? Just put it somewhere so we get an idea about what's going on. Okay. The next step is, after you see that monthly spending plan, by the way, or those monthly expenses, we're going to create a spending plan. People call it a budget, but it's not really a budget. Okay. I hate the word budget. Budget seems restrictive. Budget seems like using a phrase I hate. I can't afford that. The last time I said I can't afford that was in November 1st, 2008. It's a psychological thing, man. It makes it so that you feel defeated. Don't feel defeated. I am around the wealthiest people in America. They all have restrictions to that which they will spend money on. And it always has to do with what their preference is. It always has to do with what their plan is. Just because they can spend money doesn't mean that they will spend money. You can call it a budget. I call it a spending plan. Why? Because if you have a spending plan, you can go and say, no, I am going to spend money on this. I'm not going to spend money on that, right? When you're first getting started, you may go and say, hey, we have an objective. We got to live under X amount of dollars. So we won't be spending money going out to dinner. We will be spending money on these other areas. Groceries, of course, you got to have that. But you say, we will spend money on private education for little Johnny, or we will spend money on whatever you decide. But the objective is to create a spending plan. Now, here's the reality. The first step, you're going to look at all those expenses. What we want you to do, and we can provide a calculator for you, or formulas. Most of our students know how to use Excel a little bit, but you can Google this stuff. You can figure out, all right, how much did we spend on food last year or last month? How much did we spend on miscellaneous? And you need to get all the totals for that. You don't actually even need to do a formula like those Excel wizards. Like I kind of have become. I didn't realize I would become an Excel wizard, but you can just sum them up, sort them, categorize it, boom, 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 and just be like, yeah, this is how much we spent. We spent X amount on food. We spent X amount on transportation. Okay. Then what we want you to do is create that spending plan. And out of that spending plan, you're going to look at the details of what made up those categories, what made up the grocery budget, what made up the food budget. In fact, the one tip, depending on the categories that you're using, the one tip I like to distinguish is the difference between groceries and restaurants. And I like to look at the restaurant thing because that's us going out. Now, you're not going to get to zero, but are you going out more than you want? You may want to say, groceries/restaurant and then junk food. Are you a fast food type person? I fall on and off the fast food wagon, regrettably, embarrassingly admitting that. And so I have to test myself. I have to look at it. I go, how much money am I spending on? And I say junk food, not just going to, McDonald's or whatever, but like going into the gas station and getting crap that I just don't need. Like, how much am I spending on junk food per month? And I'm like, okay, that's the reason why you're gaining weight, Hovis. That's part of it. So this helps with the spending plan. Figure out what it is that you're going to say, I'm dictating where our money is going. We're going to be intentional with where our money is going. We're going to say, we are going to go to restaurants, but we're only going to spend X amount per month. So we're still just creating the plan. And I'm going to give you some tools and resources to kind of help you with this. So create that spending plan. Dave Ramsey does talk about having a zero budget spending plan. I completely agree with that. If you make 10 grand, plan on where you're spending all 10 grand. Most people will find themselves, hey, I make 10 grand, but I spend 15 or 13 because a lot of stuff gets put on credit cards and now you're accumulating debt. And now instead of just paying $10 for that Starbucks, you're actually paying $10 plus interest over the course of years. What we want you to do is just pay what it costs. Cost $10, just pay $10. Don't add up interest. And for those of you who say, well, we pay off our credit card every month, I must be the most lucky man to know the amount of people who come to me when I tell them, hey, stop using credit cards. And their response is, well, I pay them off every month. I just do it for the points and the miles. I say, then you must be in the 13% of America because 87% keep a balance on their credit cards. That's a recent study. 87% keep a balance on their credit card month in, month out. You must be in the 13%. And how is it that 100% of the people who tell me that are in that 13%? I find that hard to believe. And I would say that study is only, that month or several months, or they're looking at a period. I promise you, if you're using credit cards, at some point you have left a balance on there. You have paid more for an item than you actually spent. Is it worth the miles? Are you going to get wealthy on the miles? Nobody I know says they got wealthy because of miles and points and the cash back. Nobody. They get wealthy following the R.E.A.L formula. So that's the spending plan portion. That's how you can reduce your monthly expenses. This is all inside of that question, how to reduce monthly expenses. The third part is to stop using debt. As you can probably tell, I am not a fan of debt, particularly credit cards. But even more than credit cards, I have a more visceral reaction towards borrowing money to go buy cars. See, this is the part in the education I got to tell you the difference between an asset and a liability. An asset makes you money. A liability costs you money. So an asset is something like real estate. Not all real estate, cash flow producing real estate. That's an asset. Dividend producing stock, that's an asset. Notes, being a lender on performing notes, that's an asset because that's making me money. A liability just costs you money. So when you finance a car, you are financing. Everyone knows that car's value is going down. In fact, a brand new car goes down like 30% the first year, another 10, 15% year two, and it's well below 50% for most cars, well below 50% in just a few years. And so I actually, when I buy cars, I'm buying them about 3 to 4 years old. I'm trying to, knock down all that depreciation so that I'm not the one taking that hit. And there are websites out there that you can search, what's the depreciation schedule on this type of car? And some cars depreciate very quickly, some over a larger period of time. But regardless, if you go buy a brand new car and you go finance it, you are financing a depreciating liability that the amortization, this is where amortization is when you're paying more in interest than you are in principal, paying off your loan, the beginning of the loan. So quite literally, most people get underwater on their car notes the day they drive it off the lot. And so now you're underwater, which means you owe more than the car is worth. So if that car is worth $20,000, you may have a loan, you may still have a balance of 25 or 30. Why would you use leverage, debt, to finance a depreciating, amortizing liability? That is one of the worst things to do. So avoid it. That's what's making it so that your monthly expenses are so high. That's what's making it so that you're not able to use that money to do what you're supposed to do with that money, which is eventually acquire passive income. That's how you become wealthy. Acquiring passive income, cash flowing assets that become larger than your monthly expenses is the real wealth formula. Why would you use a nickel towards anything else? Why would you allow the banks to get rich off of you? Well, the reason is you want to keep up with the Joneses. Don't keep up with the Joneses. The Joneses are broke. Like, everyone around you is broke. They don't look broke. They're driving a new car. They're wearing brand name clothes. They're living in a big house that they can't afford. They're up to debt to their eyeballs. They're stressed out beyond belief. They're trapped driving to a job that they hate because they don't feel like they can get out of it. That's the whole purpose of the Real Wealth Formula. This podcast is for me to help you escape all that. So PropStream is the most comprehensive and AI-enhanced real estate data provider nationwide. We equip real estate professionals with powerful tools and marketing solutions, helping them make informed decisions and find top leads faster. Visit realwealthformula.com/sponsors for a special link to get a free trial and a ton of goodies only for you, Real Wealth Formula moguls. So you can keep doing what you're doing and you'll get the same results. Why don't we try something different? Let's stop using debt. Let's stop using credit cards. Who cares about the miles? Because some of the things that you may determine as you are creating your spending plan is that you're just not going to travel as much, or you're going to travel locally. You're going to do staycations. And by the way, that's actually a really fun thing. Like, I live in Denver, Colorado, and there are people who fly from all over the world to come to Colorado and experience the mountains and see what's going on with the city of Denver. Why wouldn't we go stay at a local hotel, local resort, go to the Gaylord, right? It's like, that cost me a couple $100, whereas if I fly across the country, rent a car, do all this stuff, take the kids or whatever, that's going to cost me thousands of dollars when I can go get a similar experience just doing a staycation. Excellent option. Experience the resort and that stuff. Many of you say, no, well, let's go camping. Camping's a great idea, even though don't think that camping is, my experience with camping has been, it's more expensive than you think. You got to pay for the pad. You got to pay for all this stuff, all this equipment, whatever. Can you reuse it? Sure. But it's like, it seems like a lot of work to me. So I'm not a huge camper. Maybe you are. That's great. I don't like it. Cost too much. I would much rather go to a resort, hang by the beach or hang by the pool, chill, let people bring, drinks and food and all that kind of stuff, and listen to the live band. That's my jam. But you get a different jam, that's fine with you. Create that spending plan so you can afford it, right? Be intentional about where your money is going. So stop using debt. Get out of that. We'll talk ad nauseum likely throughout this whole multiple episodes about getting out of debt. And then the one thing is, you got to pay off that debt, pay off that consumer debt. You may want to sell your car that you're underwater on. You may want to negotiate with the lender. You may want to go buy, my advice, go buy a $5,000 car that has low miles, that'll get you to and from work while you're working this system, because at the end of the day, our objective is to become wealthy. It's not to become working poor like everyone else. And so pay off that consumer debt. Get out of those car loans. Get out of that credit cards. Get out of personal loans. Like, paying off debt, according to both Warren Buffett, Mark Cuban, and many others, is the best investment you can make. And just from a numbers perspective, let's think about it. Let's say you have a credit card that has a 21% interest rate. Buffett is considered one of the best investors ever. And he just announced that he is now stepping down as the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. I'm a big Buffett historian. I know a lot about his life. I read the book Snowball, which is a beast of a book, but it's the only authorized version of his life, only authorized biography of his life. And in there, he talks about the various investments that he got. He's just stepped down. They did an analysis of his stock picking, and he has gotten a 19.9% average annual return. Now, that beats the S&P 500, which during that same period was 10.8%. So he almost doubles the S&P 500, which everyone would think, yeah, that's a good investment. And it is. Getting 10.8% on an annual basis, year in, year out, that's a good return. You'll be just fine doing something like that. But you know what is even better than both the S&P 500 and Buffett? Is paying off that 21% credit card, that 27% car note, that 36% personal loan that you got. Like, oh man, like get out of that debt. By paying that off, you're getting that return. Okay. So get out of consumer debt. The last one is once you're out of debt, you're working this is what you're doing all the time. So first, I wanted you to go and just figure out what your expenses were. Second, I wanted you to go and create a spending plan. And in that spending plan, one of those categories is paying off debt, like more than what the minimum is, because the minimum will keep you in debt, keep you in bondage for a long time. Okay, we don't want that. What we want to do is get you to have some freedom. I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. In Proverbs, it says that the borrower is slave to the lender. Now, there's other context to that. I'll get that for another episode. But we want you in financial freedom. Okay, we want you to see the other side of this and not on the borrower side. So getting a part of your spending plan ought to be paying off debt, right? In fact, the payments that you made towards debt will probably shock you. But the third step, like I said, was identify your expenses, create a spending plan. The next one is track that spending plan and track your expenses. It is an app that gets used through the Ramsey Solutions people, Dave Ramsey and his group. It's called the $1 app. Probably the link in the show descriptions for the $1 app. And that way you can kind of go and download the app. I still use it. Though I don't really care about what I spend, I still use it. It's just so I can track it. It's so easy. You click a few buttons, boom, 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 and I look back and say, oh, we spent X amount in travel. Oh, we spent X amount in junk food. It's try to help me with a diet situation, like I said. But the most wealthy people on the planet track their expenses. Most of the time, it's an accountant for them through their business. But they want to know what's going on with their money. It's kind of like, I'm a baseball fan. It's kind of like keeping track of your stats. I'm also updating my net worth on a regular basis. I'm trying to keep track. It's like keeping score. So keep score every month about how well you're doing financially. Nobody else cares about your money. You got to care about your money. You've got to be the one who cares about where this money is going. And so one of the things that I have done is I'm a big foodie. And I wanted to start learning how to cook so that we didn't go out to restaurants all the time, and particularly junk food all the time. I read this book, man, I can't remember the name of the author, Pollard, I believe his name is. It's called Food Rules. And basically his whole food rule was eat whatever you can make. And so I took up that challenge and I said, oh, okay. Because he's basically saying eat real food is at the end of the day what he's talking about. And because if you're eating junk food, they're putting so much preservatives and sugar and all that kind of stuff. And he goes, instead, just eat what you make. And so I said, all right, this will kind of kill two birds with one stone. I started to learn how to cook. Saved money not going out to eat. Could still have the whole family come over for Sunday dinner, and I'm sitting there cooking for them. So I get the instant gratification of my family liking the food that I'm preparing for them. I get a kick out of that. And so I started to learn how to cook. I started getting into it, right? Started watching YouTube videos and whatnot. Guys, I'm a really good cook. I make jambalaya, right? I even started getting into making my own bread. I know this sounds weird. It's like, what is this dude talking about personal finance as this wealthy real estate investing mogul, and he's talking about making his own bread? Well, for me, it's something I can control. I can't control everything that happens throughout the day. I can control the recipe and the food and how it tastes, and then I get instant gratification from it. I prepare it, I make it how I like, and I can eat it, and I can share it with people. So I like to cook. It's one of my hobbies, right? I like to golf. I like to go to live events, sporting events, concerts, that kind of stuff, and I like to cook. So if you're ever around, if you're ever in town, let me know and I might whip something up for us. But one of the things I did make is bread. But I don't just make bread. I don't go to the grocery store and take the flour and put it in my KitchenAid. No, which by the way is a mixer. I may lose all street cred that I've got talking about, cooking now. But hey, I'm just trying to make it, I'm just trying to tell you how you can help, reduce some expenses. And one of those ways is to cook for yourself. So I don't make it from flour that you get at the store. I actually order my own wheat berries. If you've never seen a wheat berry, it looks like a little seed. So I have wheat berries that I get brought in by the 5-pound bag. And I take those wheat berries and I have my own grain mill. So I put it into a grain mill that then produces the flour. I then take the flour and we'll make bread out of it, right? With my bread maker. But I will also make pasta. I make lasagna out of this stuff, right? So here I am making lasagna sheets it goes from grain berries to milled flour to lasagna sheets. I guess that's what you call them, lasagna sheets. I then make my own pasta sauce. I call it gravy. I make my own gravy using, the sofrito and all that kind of stuff. I then make cheese with some bechamel, and we make this homemade lasagna. Guys, I'm going to tell you, you go to Olive Garden for their lasagna, this doesn't even come close. Mine goes, it's almost like it's not even the same thing. It so melts in your mouth. Unbelievable. And the total cost of this to make this awesome, great lasagna that my family loves is like $8, right? Instead of going out to an Italian spot and spending $150. I'm not saying you got to go make your own freaking lasagna. Certainly not out of wheat berries. That's like unrealistic. I'm just telling you a story about some creative ways that I've done to try to help that monthly expense budget, that spending plan. You're going to come up with other stuff. There's other things that people talk about where they, instead of going to the movies, they're staying home and making a movie night with the kids, right? Or you're making popcorn and you got the candy and you're serving it up like the old school movie theaters used to be. Maybe instead of again, flying to Florida for a vacation, maybe you stay home with something else. I don't know what it is. But at the end of the day, the whole point of this, to reduce your monthly expenses, is to get it to a number that you can live with, that you can make happen on a consistent basis, that you can say, we live on $10,000 a month. Because now you have a target to aim for. Now you have a target to aim for, not your salary. Like your salary has a job, which is to acquire passive income, okay? The money that you make has a job, and that's to go buy cash flowing assets. But you got to start with this spending plan that you can live with, that can make it so that you are aiming for something, that you're living the life that you want to live on a month in, month out basis, and that you're saying, hey, as long as I acquire, think about it. Let's just do basic math. If you're living on $10,000 a month and you can go get some cash flowing assets that produce you $1,000 a month, you just need to go acquire 10 cash flowing assets. Could be stocks with dividend, could be businesses that pay a distribution. My favorite, most controllable, most predictable is real estate. Go buy 10 rental properties that throw off $1,000 a month apiece. And you're like, well, how do I buy 10 rental properties? That's what this show is about, to teach you how to buy those assets, how to work the real wealth formula. I bring experts in here to kind of help us with all these different kind of angles, and we talk about it ad nauseum to kind of make it so that you understand exactly how to become a real estate mogul, how to become a mogul and follow the real wealth formula. That's what I did. That's how I was able to retire when I was 31 years old. Regardless of the age, don't get caught up on that. Get invested in the process. And part of the process is reducing those monthly expenses so that you have a target to be aiming at, so that you and your family know we can live for the rest of our life on this and do it over and over again. That you're not working just to survive. You're working to thrive by acquiring cash flowing assets that produce passive income that become larger than your monthly expenses and therefore become really wealthy. That's real wealth. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we've got another episode for you. I'll catch you on that side.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Wealth Formula hosted by Brad Hovis. If this episode helped you see money and purpose a little differently, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Share with someone who's ready to build real wealth and keep building the life, purpose, and freedom you were made for. Until next time, keep your goals clear and your wealth real.